Morning. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another workshop. We are excited to share with you some tips and thoughts on appearances, remotes, and special events, and how broadcasters can get more out of these, and how you can get the audience actually excited about them, and also maybe not make some mistakes that we hear a lot of stations doing. I'm Tracy, and I'm standing by with both Mike and Andy, and we'll be on here with you in about 6 minutes. When the countdown timer runs to 0, we are going to start. So you're welcome to use the chat box and ask questions and talk to one another as much as you like. But make use of that. And if you have any questions on this topic, you can submit that at any time. We'll stay on and answer those questions for as long as they come in at the end of the presentation. Stand by. Once again, welcome to the workshop. Those of you who are just logging on now, we appreciate it. It's good to have all of you joining. If you have any questions or comments, you can type it into the chat box. We'll answer those questions along the way and also at the end of the presentation today. We expect to go about 20 minutes or so, and we also expect to get a lot of questions about this topic. We already have more than usual that have been submitted in advance. We will get to all of those either during our 20-minute presentation or at the end. But we want to make this interactive. We want it to be something that is valuable to you and that you can use and apply on your stations right away. So you can use that chat box if you're on YouTube. If you're watching it at tjohnsonmediagroup.com, the chat box is not available to you, but if you want to click through to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to communicate there. We're going to get started here in about 3 minutes, so please stand by. We're going to be starting here in about 1 minute. So this would be a good time to text your friends and tell them to log on to the YouTube channel and watch the workshop live. Bring your colleagues and other people inside the radio station together too. And this would probably be something that would be great for the sales team to watch as well. We've got some interesting and valuable advice that we would pass out to the sales team. I'm Tracy Johnson, along with Mike Shepard and Andy Meadows from Tracy Johnson Media Group. It's a pleasure to be here with you for another workshop. Today, we're talking about appearances, remotes, and special events. The presentation will last about 20 minutes or so. It'll be followed by questions and answers. You can type in those questions into the chat box at any time that you like, and we will answer those questions about appearances and events or anything that you like, as long as those questions continue to come in. So thank you again for being a part of this. We look forward to sharing some information that can be valuable. And we think that this is a topic that is relevant for all stations in all formats, in all market sizes. Now, in the past, when we thought about stations that did a lot of appearances and remotes, especially live broadcasts, it was restricted more to the smaller and medium markets. But that's not the case so much anymore, is it, Mike and Andy?
No, it's certainly not. And I'm a good person to talk about this because I've made a lot of the mistakes that we're going to go over, starting in a small market, moving to medium, and then even in the bigger markets where you get so overloaded, they kind of get away from you at times.
Yeah, I mean, our industry is in a challenge times. We're trying to find revenue. Obviously, events and remotes can drive some revenue. The trick, as we all know, is to not let it destroy the content on the air in the process. So we think you can have it both ways. There are ways to mitigate the damage of some of these events on air and actually make it a positive for the listening audience. And there's some things that can be very valuable to you behind the scenes as well.
And every radio station talks about getting the two sides of the building on the same page, between programming and sales and promotions kind of in the middle of that, and everybody going in the same direction and communicating. But how often does that actually happen? Because there are such different goals. Well, hopefully we will give you some tools to work with here and give you some advice that can make this better. So let's start by talking about when you should be doing a live show or a live event or even a broadcast from an appearance, and when you shouldn't. Choose carefully. What are some of the considerations in whether we should be live at an event or not, guys?
Large audience fits the format is definitely one of the first two boxes to check off.
Yeah, I think it's value. I mean, what value is the event bringing, not only monetarily, but to the station image, chance to touch the audience? You know, what's the purpose? We'll talk about this here in a minute, but a lot of times we just show up and there we are, and we expect magic to happen. So I think identifying the goal for the event, what it means from a revenue point of view, and what it means from a station, marketing point of view.
We have a client that says most everything can be fixed through better prep. And that applies to this as well. More prep in advance, more communication in advance. And one of the guidelines that I like to go by is if you're going to do a live show or do an appearance or an event, make it in front of a built-in big group that you can at least have a small impact on, like a concert event. If you're going to go out and have an impact at a concert, there's a lot of people who are coming to that concert, and you're not going to have a big impact on them, but you'll have a small impact on them. Or you can have a small group with a large impact, where you're really shaking hands and making a connection and affecting them in a way that moves them closer to becoming a fan of the show or the radio station. Another consideration is, will there be a built-in audience? Yes. If there's a giant weekend sale going on in the mall and there's a built-in audience and foot traffic that's coming by it, that's fantastic. But if you're in the tire store that's behind the strip mall in the alley, that nobody naturally goes past. It's all self-generated. And then the other consideration is who controls the event. Is this something that the advertiser is doing, that the client is doing, or is this something that the station is doing that just happens to be at the advertiser location? All of those are considerations. Now, the ideal is that you'll have a big group with a large impact, with a built-in audience that you enhance by self-generating more audience and more people to come to the event. And it's controlled by the station and the promotion and programming team. That's the perfect world. That's not going to happen every time. It's not going to even happen most of the time. But if you start with that and then compromise from there, you'll end up in a much better place for promotions and events.
And one of the big distinctions there, a lot of times stations will do something as a live broadcast that should just be a remote, but they're doing it as a live broadcast because the client's willing to spend the money necessary to make it a live broadcast, but it's not really good for the client or for the station to do a live broadcast from a tire shop of a of a morning show. Even if they're willing to pay the fee, it's gonna hurt you in the long term.
Well, that's where we set ourselves up for disaster, right? It's the guy at the tire store who buys the remote and expects 5,000 people to stop by, and when they don't, well, see, radio doesn't work.
Yeah. Or you get the mobile phone store that you show up to do the appearance and the manager of the store doesn't even know you're coming.
Right.
And you put the personality in a position of trying to explain who we are and why we're there. The account executive hasn't shown up to run interference. And the manager says, well, why don't you set up over there in the corner so you don't get in the way of our customers? Right. That's not controlling the event. Roy Laughlin, who ran KISS FM and the iHeart cluster in Los Angeles for many years, once told me that radio is the only industry that hangs up a tent or puts up a tent, drives up in a van, hangs a banner, and calls that promotion.
Yep.
That's not impacting the listener. So one of the things that I really want you to take away from this is that every time you are at an event, every time you are at an appearance, every time you're at a promotion, every time you're in public, you're making a statement about your brand, about your personality brand, about the station brand, and those have a lasting branding effect. So protect that. I think you've got to be very cautious about what you say yes to and what you say and what you don't. And I know how difficult that is in this economic time, but we'll get to that when we get to the questions and answers.
Well, and a lot of the longer we've been doing this, the more we kind of get jaded for the magic of radio, and we kind of forget to think like a listener and put ourselves in their shoes, what they expect when they come out to an event, and we fall short of that.
Especially if it's something that we promoted. We've told them to come to it, and they come to it and they're disappointed in us. What does that say about us? So let's talk about live broadcast. Andy brought that up and there's a difference between doing a remote and a live broadcast. Live broadcast is where you go set up and you do the entire show from there. Remote is when you do drop-ins. The best thing is to not do either of those, to be honest with you, because it always ends up with by punishing the listener and putting the talent that's doing the broadcast in an awkward position of sounding like nothing but a pitch person for the advertiser where they are. Let's talk about when you should or should not do a live broadcast.
I'm very leery of doing a live broadcast of the show, except in very specific instances where there's a real reason for it and a real benefit to the station. For all the reasons we know, there's the technical quality, which may or may not be okay. There's the distraction with the air talent. You're asking them to do a show, but yet at the same time be an ambassador to the radio station, shake hands and kiss babies. And what happens is we all know, without that focus on the air, everything suffers. We're really not doing a good job of creating the magic that Andy talked about, and we're not doing a great job on the radio.
I think one of the big things to consider is ask yourself, can we keep the structure of the show intact when we do this live broadcast? If you can, then you should do it. If not, you should look at there are alternatives. You can do a live video stream of the show outside of the day part. that just goes to social media, and then you clip a couple pieces of that and use it on air the following day, as opposed to doing a full live broadcast of a show out there. The other thing to keep in mind is in programming, it's our job to build and protect the brand, and that extends to on-site events. We should never hand over control of our product to anyone, no matter what they're willing to pay. I know it's really hard when it's a big when somebody's cutting a big check, but you will regret it in the long run, because it's addictive. You start doing that, and you start having a lot of these live broadcasts that the talent just caters to the 5 people in front of them, and it hurts.
Yeah, and that's the biggest damage, is when you're doing a live broadcast, and it's natural for the personalities to talk about what is in front of them and interact with that handful of people who are there, and you're running off thousands of people who aren't. And to Mike's point about being really cautious about where you do a broadcast and where you don't. Even recently in the Super Bowl, I heard so many stations broadcasting from Radio Row. To a listener, does anyone know what Radio Row is or care why this station and this show happens to be on Radio Row at the Super Bowl? What does that bring to the listener experience? To me, it was really distracting, especially to hear them talking about all the things that were happening around it, when I wanted to hear them talking about the game or the event itself. And I've heard the same thing with Grammys broadcasts or Oscars broadcasts, where the station and the talent thinks this is really cool because we actually get to be there. Well, the audience is experiencing that event through celebrities who are known to be there on all types of media. So what are you bringing to it that's special and that's different, that is transporting the audience to that event?
To play off that Super Bowl point, I did hear some shows do breaks from Radio Row that were pretty good, because they kept the structure of the show intact, and they weaved whatever guests they had, which were all big celebrities, into the fabric of their show. Where they played the contest with them, they did topics with them, and it sounded like the same show, only just, hey, there's Emmett Smith stopping by, or something that people care about. So
yeah, we eventually, I programmed a sports station here in San Diego for a number of years, and we finally decided we weren't going to do Radio Row because the value was diminishing. What happened is you had a lot of PR firms out there promoting other people to come by and pitch their wares, and you started getting a lot of those, a lot of insular conversation about what we saw last night or what's going on here now. Very difficult to make that beneficial to the listener, who, at this point are really, to Tracy's point, keyed up on the game and want to hear more of that. So again, that's you turning your product over to the event producers.
Yeah. So Andy brought up streaming the live broadcast, which I think is a really powerful tool. And we can talk about this more when we get into talking about how to work with advertisers for what their expectations are, and sales departments as well. But this is really powerful. If you can have the talent out at an event and stream the broadcast on Facebook Live or on Twitch or whatever streaming service that you typically use, and you're on the air promoting how much fun you're having, and go on Facebook Live because the broadcast continues, you can keep those broadcasts on the air down to a few seconds, drive traffic to the stream, attract more people who aren't listening over the air from that stream, and hopefully leverage that and get them to come out to the event if you can show them that you're having a good time there.
And the big stipulation, and you hit it there, is that it does not have to be a simulcast. That's the mistake a lot of stations make, is it's a simulcast of audio on the air and video on social, and it has that negative impact we talked about.
And I was talking to a station about this morning. One possibility of that is, if you have talent at the event, instead of being out there for 2 or 3 hours, which is typical, go out for 1 hour and be live on Facebook the entire time, and really put on a show. Set up a stage, put on a show online, and then do drop-ins on the air. And that can be really, really powerful. So some guidelines: plan and prep every detail. I can't overstate this enough. Stations are so busy now with so many events and so many appearances that are happening, and such a small skeleton staff, that this falls through the cracks a lot of times, where every time a salesperson walks into a promotion director's office, they kind of go, oh God, here we go again. What do we have to do this weekend? But try to turn that around internally to where, oh, this is great. We get to go somewhere and promote the station this weekend. So adopt it as that, and then plan and prep every detail. And this is where communication comes into play. Don't count on the account executive to come to you with all the details planned out. They're just trying to sell it. They're trying to get you copy points to run promos on the air, and then they're going to go out and try to sell something else. They're not too worried about how it's going to be staged. So contact that venue, whether it's a paid venue, whether it's an advertiser or wherever you're going. Contact them, get a contact person there where you can talk about what's going to happen, who's in charge, how everything's going to flow, and negotiate that. You really need to stage the event, and staging the event works better when you've got personalities there because they're your stars.
Yeah, and if you inject some creativity and personality into the planning process, it makes it a lot less boring and where it doesn't just seem like paperwork everybody's filling out, but use it as a chance to get creative and come up with fun ways to, I mean, that's the personality's job, is to inject some fun into these things.
Yeah, there was an event here in San Diego, to Tracy's point, where I think it was 4th of July or something, and all the stations were promoting, come on down, we're going to be there, we'll be broadcasting live, we'll be handing things out. He went down there, and there was a series of about 6 different tents from different companies with promotion people sitting there looking at their cell phones. I mean, that was the appearance for most of the stations there. And unfortunately, that's kind of the mindset we get into. It's an obligation, and we'll promote it on the air, and we'll throw up that tent, but there's no there.
And for personalities, anytime your voice is on the air, you don't get a pass from the listeners because it's on site. I mean, you still have to plan, you still have to prepare. It's still looked at as content. It's not like in our heads, we kind of feel like, well, that's on site. They don't expect me to come up with anything that phenomenal. If they're hearing your voice on the air, you don't get a pass.
Yeah, and not just on the air, but in public. So Don't hide in public. So different ways of promoting appearances. Use your database. Hopefully you have an email database. Hopefully it's large. Promote it. Promote it on social media. And of course, the sales department has probably sold some on-air promos, but make it fun. Make it about the things that you're staging at the event. We'll talk about what some of those things might be as we go along, but you do need to promote it to get the word out there. But what is some of the things that you want to promote as opposed to what you want to avoid promoting?
It's the same, thinking like a listener, and what's the listener benefit, and those are the things that you want to promote. Another good way to do that is to build a boost budget into the contract. If you're selling any of these, they have to provide X amount of a boost budget for you to use on social media to drive. And if you want, even a prize budget in there as well.
Yeah, and if you're strategic about it, at KSON in San Diego, we had our own band that would go out. It was the Flatbed Band, and so there was a built-in entertainment component of a known quantity that represented the station along with the personalities. So now all of a sudden we've got an event there. We've got an anchor point, and we can promote that. It's not come and get 2 tires for the price of 1. There's a listener value in there. The other thing that we did, we would try to get the client to also, when it was a client situation, to promote to their database and to promote to their people. So we have that synergy of promotion. There was a lot of an invitation to come out, and then there was a benefit for coming out.
And like you said, lead with that benefit, not end with it. A lot of times in those promos, I hear them tag at the very end what the listener benefit is, and they already lost me.
So what are some of those things that you could do at the event? I love Mike's Flatbed Band, and that was all over San Diego when he had that going at KSON. If you're a couple of things that you could do is, if you're a morning show that plays a game on the air regularly, like Heads Up or $1,000 Minute or any trivia game, or if you're known for playing a music oriented game, play that live and make that the focal point, that we're playing $1,000 Minute live for an hour on Saturday morning from 11 to noon. Come and join us, be a part of it. And what are some of the other things that you can do at events?
Well, building off of that, what I really love is when a show takes something like that they do every day, like $1,000 Minute, and they find a way to even build it and make it bigger on site by adding some visuals to it and making it a lot of fun. So it's just getting creative like that. Like what are some of things that we do on air, and how can we extend that to on-site and really find a way to engage in it? Because on air, we're always trying to get them to engage and interact either on the phones or on social media. Now you're actually in front of people, and sometimes we turn off then, and that's exact wrong thing to do. Events are also a great way to capture audio that you can use later on the air.
Yeah. But you got to make it fun. I've had stations that have bought, I don't know if you're familiar with the Love Ball. It's a giant, it's like 5 feet in diameter, and it just says love on it. And as silly as that sounds, you create Love Ball community events, come out and share the love. People will come out just to get their picture taken with that Love Ball. When they come out to get their picture taken, you're taking the picture. So you get their email address, and you could email it or text it to them. Now they're putting that up on social media, posing with your personalities and your talent. Another thing you can do is create a photo booth, basically. Just put up a backdrop, make it look like the studio behind you, just a curtain with the backdrop on there, and take pictures with the personalities. Make sure the listener gets it so they can send it out. If you don't have a personality there, get cardboard stand-ups that they can get their picture taken with the personalities. We talked about staging it, some different things you can do. Create a playlist or soundtrack of the station to have going at all times to get attention. And playlist or soundtrack, don't play the station live because you're playing commercials.
Right.
And you don't want that message to go out that this is the station that plays commercials. You want that going out, this is the station that's having a good time with you. Or bring out a band, like Mike was saying. Stage it with a large video screen and a PA system.
And for the love of God, actually get a real PA. You know what I mean? They're not expensive. You know what I mean? We're in the audio business, and there's a lot of times I'm like, it's a tiny little boom box. I'm like, come on, man.
Distorted, yes.
Yeah. The PAs are not expensive. It's super cheap to buy video screens now. So I know that some people are probably watching, oh, that's adding up. No, it's not. It's pretty inexpensive to get video screens now, and there's ways to do it on virtually any budget, and that visual is so important.
And get it up in the air. Don't just put it on the street where nobody can see you. Get it up in the air. Put it up on a stage or a platform. Somehow get it up high so people can see you. And as we mentioned, play games. We talked about $1,000 minute. We have stations that play $1,000 minute on the air every morning. They go out and play it at appearances and events. And some stations have even built specific sales packages around $1,000 minute live. And we'll do a pub crawl once a month, like on a Thursday. And they'll go to several different bars and play the game for 20 or 30 minutes, pack up and go to another bar, charge each of the bars $1,000, $2,500, whatever they can get for that appearance and promotion. And they're leaving behind some promotion to listen to the station tomorrow morning. We're playing this game live on the air. Coffee shops, works at coffee shops, works at the patio of some restaurants, especially during happy hour. Things like that are terrific for this. Other things to do at the event, if you have a prize, get listeners in your database. Sometimes they'll sign up just to be in your database and stay in touch with you, especially if your event is fun. If it's a fun event, get them to sign up, say, hey, we'll let you know when the next event is coming. So that's another reason to make it fun, because they'll want to come back to the next one. Collect audio and testimonials. Andy talked about this. Great thing to do with this is to build a replica of a radio station. And it could just be some cheap carpentry work with an old control board that isn't even connected to anything. And the microphone goes down to an iPhone that you've hidden underneath the console, but make it look like a radio station. Put some headphones up there and let listeners come up and pretend that they're on the radio. And then while they're doing that, have them give you a couple of testimonials about your show or your station that you can use on the air.
And one trick to make that work well is to have it scripted and an improvised version as a starter, because they're going to have no idea what to say and just give you a bunch of random audio. But not everybody needs to be scripted, and if they're all scripted, it'll sound like that. So having an option of both, here's a script to work off of, and then here's a thing to improvise off. Like, what do you think of B92? You know,
right?
That just gets them rolling. and coach them up.
Coach them as they're stumbling around saying, I'm Andy from Fort Worth, and my whole family listens all the time. And, we just really get, so ask them, why do you listen? What do you like most about it? And then put it into words for them that they can repeat. And you'll get some great testimonials from that.
Yep.
And try to make it a theme. We talked about the love ball. We talked about $1,000 minute. If you, Mike's flatbed, if you can create a theme now, instead of doing a random appearance, event, promotion, live broadcast, you're now making another stop on your tour. This is just another event in a series of events that gathers momentum. And especially if you've got some things that are going well. At the event, every personality, I believe every event should have a personality there. And I believe that personalities should want to be at the event, and they should be compensated for their time and for their endorsement. Doesn't happen all of the time, but even if you're not, for the right event, the personalities, you should want to be there because it's a chance to build fans. When you go there, you should have photos that you can hand out. It doesn't have to be big, it can be small, but there should be photos and pens or Sharpies where you can sign autographs and personalize that to the audience. Andy talked before about radio's magical to people. It is if we make it, and this is one way of doing that.
And sometimes it's personalities.
Sorry.
Sometimes it's personalities we shy away. Like we'll even tell people, I'm a pseudo celebrity. I'm on the air. No, you're not. You're a celebrity. And if you act like a celebrity, people will treat you as such. So don't make fun of the photos on the table. Like embrace it. To that guy, you are a celebrity. You're the famous voice on the radio, and don't kill that magic for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some ways to customize it too. We did trading cards for our sports personalities. So, you could collect the trading cards with the different photos. Then we had their stats and some fun stuff on the back.
Have handouts. If you do trading cards or if you do photos, put some details on the back about what you do on the show, what you do on the station, what times to listen, how you can contact the station, your phone number, your social media addresses. How can I engage with you and interact with you after I leave? Make sure that everybody gets some of those in their hands, and use thank you notes. Thank you notes have gone out of style because everything's electronic and digital now. And because of that, a handwritten thank you note going out to your advertisers, to your partners, to the people who made that work goes a long, long way. Dwyer and Michaels do this in the Quad Cities, and they say that they get so much respect and so much goodwill from that because nobody else does that. And if that comes from a personality who writes to that tire store and says, thank you for letting us come and have our event at your appearance, it goes a long way and really helps the sales department. A couple of tips here, then we'll start taking your questions. If you have a question, you can type it into the chat box. I see Bob is using that a little bit, but if you have questions, type it into the chat box. We will answer those questions here in just a second, but now's the time to start typing those in. Personalities, when you do go to the events, when you're at the venue, be a politician. Win the vote. Here are some of the ways that you can do that. Let's talk about so often, guys. Personality will come and they'll be hiding in the van or hiding in the back of the tent, waiting for that 2 hours to go by so they can pick up their talent fee and go home.
Yeah, and doing their breaks in a closet, hiding away from. I mean, a lot of on-air people are introverts, and that's okay as long as you just have to turn it on when you're on site. We're all capable of doing that, and we're getting paid money to do so. So don't do the breaks in the closet. Get out in front of people, interact and engage. And as a manager, if you reward and incentivize that behavior, it'll start happening.
Yeah, and as a program director, you can go out there with the talent sometimes and almost be like a fan advocate, and it kind of feeds on itself. It's like, hey, do you want to talk to Freddie and Katie over here? We'd love to have you. Here they are right here, and they start getting some feedback, and they get some positive notes, and then all of a sudden, it's taking off. They gain confidence. And it starts to work for them.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because a lot of times personalities, like Andy said, are shy or introverts, and they don't want to force themselves. It's awkward and uncomfortable for them to approach a listener. But the listener is shy about approaching the personality because that's a star. That's the person I listen to every morning. So no interaction happens. And if you can have that advocate in between, if you can train your promotion team that this is a part of your job to make this person more famous, you're their handler, and facilitate the introduction, it can really go a long way to creating an experience. Politicians, when they go out on events, they don't hide. They don't come out and say a few words on stage and then rush off stage. They go out and they shake hands with everybody in the crowd, and they make eye contact. They take pictures and they smile. They look like they're having a good time, because that's how you win votes. And essentially, that's what we're doing in radio.
Yeah, and if you have some interactive and engaging activities planned, that helps force some of those personalities to make that connection.
Sales or programmers and promotion people, get in front of it. One of the ways that you can create better events for the station is to create things that are easier for the sales team to go out and sell. And this is part of where that communication needs to happen. There's too many stations where the salesperson is going to a client and saying, what can we do to get this buy? And the client says, well, what can you add to it to incentivize us? And they just start piling on trinkets. So they're buying trinkets, not engagement from the audience. But if you can get in front of that and create, like we said before, create that theme or create something that we're already doing there, you can help manage the expectations for what happens at the event. And as we talked about before, work directly with the clients after the salesperson sells it. Don't just show up on Saturday or Sunday hoping that everybody knows what to expect, because chances are they don't.
Yeah, and every client has a different idea in their mind of what a radio, remote, or live broadcast entails. I mean, you can literally show up on site and they think you're going to broadcast a concert of theirs on the radio for 2 hours, even though they bought a remote. And you're like, so you got to keep that in mind when you're setting those. It's so important to set those parameters and spell out exactly what you get with it and exactly what you don't.
So we will take your questions now. We have a bunch. There are a lot of questions that have come in advance, and there's one or two that have come in on the chat box. We'll take the ones that came in advance first. First one is, how do I handle a sales department that sells remotes and events for businesses that don't make any sense? What do we do to fix this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, I get it's hard to turn down revenue, but there's also ways to redirect revenue sometimes, because the other challenge of like I said, that's a short-term win if you're doing a remote or a live, especially a live broadcast, because live broadcasts are expensive. If you do that from the wrong business, you can talk them into never advertising again. Yeah. Because it costs a ton of money and it's not going to work for them. So just like when a client that has a terrible voice and terrible copy records it, you try to talk them into using somebody else for the copy, or maybe taking some notes on the copy. The same kind of thing goes for a client that really wants a remote or a live broadcast and it's not the right fit for them.
Yeah, have that redirection and have something else shiny over here that you can offer them that would, give them that same sense of value added without forcing a bad fit.
At the end of the day, it's a re-education of your sales team, because they are out desperately trying to get on buys, and other stations are piling on value added to get on the same buy that they're trying to get. And in a lot of cases, there's a media buyer on the other side who is trying to justify their existence to the advertiser by saying, look how much extra value I got from the station by negotiating on your behalf. None of that is necessarily good for the advertiser, and none of it is necessarily good for the radio station, but you've got two representatives who are coming together, teaming up to screw everything up for you. So if you can re-educate the sales department, and this doesn't happen in one meeting or two, it happens over a long period of time, where you get them to really talk about how we can affect the business of the advertiser who's paying this bill, not the media buyer who's placing the buy, but the business.
And if you're
get to that decision maker.
If you're value adding remotes remotes, broadcast, and appearances, then stop doing that, because clearly need to go back to the drawing board and beef up, invest in your setup so you can actually charge for those. It shouldn't be a value added.
The conversation that you want your account executives to be having with the advertiser are, what do you want to accomplish with this campaign? How many people do you need to see come through your doors for this to be a success? What does a win look like? What is a successful promotion, campaign, ad schedule look like for you? And let me design something that will help you achieve those goals, which may or may not include anything at their business. Radio works if you have the right messaging. Any advertiser who goes on the air, you can run 10 commercials in a week and sell big screen TVs for 63-inch TVs for $100, and you will sell them out. The message works and the media works.
Right.
But what are you offering to the audience to motivate them to come to that business? And that should be the conversations that we're having with our advertisers.
Worked with a great sales manager who was terrific at redirecting on those situations when the client would have unrealistic expectations, and basically just rephrasing and throwing it back. So we're not going to have any prizes. There's no real reason for us to be here other than we're going to do this. I mean, would you come to something like that? I mean, playing the Columbo, I mean, I'm not sure if I understand. Would that be something that you'd go to? And generally speaking, even if it pissed them off a little bit, it started the dialogue where the client started to understand where we were coming from.
Next question is, what about station swag? Does that make any difference at all at sales events, remotes, appearances, and promotion? Does handing out station gear help?
Sure. And I mean, it depends on if it's something with 15 sponsors on the back that looks like crud, then probably not. But if it's a good quality t-shirt, they're going to want, I mean, would they actually wear it? Is it stuff they're actually going to wear and advocate for the station with it? Then yeah.
Yeah, we've had great results, with good premiums. We had some very nice KSON hats that we used back in the day that, and we'd go out with a ton of them. We wouldn't just go with 5, but it was all built into the price, it was built into this event that really had value, not only for the listeners, but the client could see the value in it, and they were willing to pay a little bit more to make that happen.
If you have really good premium items, you can sell those premium items, sell them to fans, because they will do things to be involved with your brand. If you have cheap things, I'm giving away keychains and bumper stickers. I don't know if that really moves the needle at all, but be creative with it. I've got a show at WKLB in Boston, gives away beer koozies. And if you play their game on the air and lose, sorry, you didn't win the $1,000, but we're going to send you a beer koozie. And we teach the audience to get really excited about that koozie. Here in San Diego, Jagger and Christie give away Jagger and Christie chip clips, which cost like a dime. And they hand out a bunch of those, and they've kind of become known for that. So yeah, I think it can be effective. I don't know that you're going to get a lot of people that come out just for the swag, but anything that you can get in the audience's hands that they can take with them, that reminds them of the event and is a follow-up, I think is a really good thing. Next question is, what's the ideal length for a remote break from a commercial business, and how many should be programmed each hour?
Well, a remote break should be like any other break. I mean, it should be what you've sold them for it. If it's 60 seconds, that should be what it is. The problem is we get there, the client's looking over our shoulder, and they're looking for 3 minutes, maybe an interview, and that just doesn't work. So I think if you're trying to establish a presence there, you need more than one break per hour, but you need to treat it as inventory.
Yeah, 60 seconds seems to be the sweet spot. And anything longer than that, I think, is problematic.
And it's key that you don't put the talent, and for stations, don't put the talent in a position of being the traffic cop.
Yeah.
Talent shouldn't be telling the advertiser no.
Right.
That should be, somebody should be at the event, whether it's the point person for the promotions team, the account executive, program director. Somebody else should set the expectations for the advertiser before they go on the air, if they're allowed to go on the air at all. And that should be set up ahead of time. Don't put the talent in the position of being that cop. Another thing is, if you put and this is the next question, is how do you handle advertisers who insist on being on the air and don't know when to shut up? And that happens where you can tell them in advance, this is going to be a 30-second break, it's a 60-second break, and they start talking and they keep going and going and going, and it's really hard to cut them off. Well, don't just put them on to talk about their product and business. They should be on talking about why people should come to this event. And if you do that, maybe if you're playing your game at the event, if you're playing heads up, play the game with the advertiser. Yep. Show them having fun along with you, because that will bring people down, and that will has a better chance of turning into customers for you.
Again, weave them into the fabric of the show. And if you absolutely have to have them join you on a break and interview them, that has to be recorded. You cannot go live with that and expect it to be. Nobody can. It's just human nature. When you're there in front of them and it's a paying client, it's super hard to keep that to a reasonable length.
This came from a program director who says, what's the best way to get my personalities to understand that it's important to go to our station promotions when we can't pay their talent fees every time?
I mean, to some extent, it is part of the job that you just know this is what we signed up for. We're going to have to go to station events, and especially the big station events and station promotions. They're going to be kind of all hands on deck, and not everybody's getting a talent fee for those. And hopefully you make up for it by having plenty of paid things where they do get a talent.
Well, you got to sell their personal interest in it, building their brand, building their listener base. It really is in their best interest to go out there and campaign and do the old precinct marketing we talked about.
Okay, go into the chat box. Again, if you have questions, you can type them in now, and we will answer all the questions you have, whether it's about remotes, appearances, events, or about anything else surrounding personality radio or radio. Question from Keith is, from your experience, are there creative or fun interactive games that you've seen at events or remotes other than Cornhole and Connect 4? We talked about that a little bit in the presentation where we talked to me, the best games you can play are the ones that showcase your talent and are a callback to things that you do on the air, to give the audience an experience, not just coming out and having them play shuffleboard or plinko or whatever at the game. There's nothing wrong with that, to give them something to do while they're there. But if you can have something that is a callback to what the station represents, that's fantastic.
I love it when shows take something they're doing on air and turn it into a mini game show on site. That's so much fun, especially when they invest a little in the setup and they have something visual to go with it. I mean, listeners really dig that stuff.
Well, a real fun one is something like Which One of Us. Some of our shows do that on the air, and you can take that live where, the audience has to guess which one has a certain character trait. And I found that to be really sticky and interactive, and where the crowd gets into it.
I've seen sports stations, and Mike, you might have done this at some of the stations that you programmed, that will take great moments in local sports team history and have a video of that, and let listeners come out and put the headphones on and do play-by-play of that event, and then give them a copy of it with a digital copy. We email it to them later, that they can have of them doing play-by-play of an iconic event in the community.
We did that. Sometimes we'd let them do their own hot take. Okay, you've got 60 seconds for your sports rant here. And exactly as you said, we give them the MP3 file, we'd send it to them. They'd start sharing it, becomes viral. And it's a great way to bond with the audience.
Yeah. Brody says, I tend to focus on having conversations with listeners more than spin the wheel. I'm not against games or entering for tickets, but actual connection has been better for me than high spinner wheel. And I agree with that. There's nothing like connection and talking to listeners, but I think you need both. You need that personal connection where you're shaking their hands, looking them in the eye, having a conversation, maybe getting a testimonial with them, and at the same time, giving them something to do. And by the way, something to do, like spinning our wheel for a prize, is not really something to do anymore. It's just a distraction because everybody's doing that.
Yeah, but it is all impression based. So I get what that guy's saying, and that's true. Those deeper connections are more powerful, more likely to get them to actually listen into the show. But you can only make so many of those. So especially if you're at a large event, you want a combination of both. Something that's going to walk by and see it and be interested in coming and interacting with, and then the personal connections on top of that with as many people as you can.
If you're at a big event like a concert or a sporting event or something where you're trying to make an impression on a lot of people in at least a small way, you really have to brainstorm that before you go in and start thinking about how we're going to get attention with all of the other distractions that are here and people who are here for a very different reason. So think about how you can stage it, how you can be on that microphone to call attention to yourselves, and what it's going to take to get people to come up to you so you can have that personal one-on-one connection with as many people as you can.
And have that tie back to on air. I can't tell you how many concerts I've seen where on air talent get up in front of 10 or 15,000 people. They tell a quick joke, they intro them, and they never do anything to tie back to their show the next day at all. And it's such a missed opportunity.
Well, the analogy to show prep is really important here. I mean, what we want to start to do is what's the desired outcome? What do we want to have happen at this event? And then let's strategize backwards from that to figure out what mechanisms we need to put in place to get the desired result. I think sometimes we just go, okay, we're going to go out there and here we are. And, you know, we all know the result when that happens.
Good discussion going on in the chat box. Brody says that he has used song lyrics from big songs with longevity in the format on the front of a T-shirt with the station logo on it, have been popular prizes. That's a great idea. In fact, there are companies that will create those on demand. If you go to radioswagshop.com, radioswagshop.com will set you up for free, and you can come up with any phrase or any design on a shirt and have it available to print and send out on demand without even touching it within 24 hours. So you can give those designs away, have them created and sent directly to the listener at home, or you can also make them available for sale if you get your station set up with that. Keith talks about koozies being a big hit for them too. Koozies are great, especially country stations tend to do that quite a bit. Drawstring bags are another. Shirts, stocking caps, coffee mugs, tumbler sets, and they sold it out. Bob Goff up in Wisconsin, Bob says that they sold it out. So you don't have to give all these things away. A lot of times when you're at promotions or appearances, listeners will come up and say, hey, what do you got for free? How are you going to feed my kid? Where are the free hot dogs? That kind of thing. You get a few people like that, but with good quality products, you can turn that into a revenue stream as well. And if you're creative with it and make it event oriented, so it's almost a collector's item from the event, you can really do well with those types of things.
And that guy's point about the song lyric, Finish the Lyric is a really easy interactive game to play with for music stations when you're on site, and you capture some really funny audio too, because they almost always sing the song because it's just how your head works. Yeah. So you do get some funny audio out of that.
Yeah, any trivia game, music games, if you go on to insidersradionetwork.com and become a member, we've got tons of music games and trivia games, movie games, TV games that are fun to play at promotions and appearances. I don't see any more questions coming in. We appreciate your time and your attention. This is your last call if you have a question for us. Other than that, we're going to wrap it up, but we appreciate your time for the workshops. We enjoy doing them, and hopefully you get some good value out of it. If you have any questions to follow up, or if you would like some consultation for your stations on how to create bigger and better events, how to work with your personalities to get the most out of them, to work with your promotion and sales teams, we do that at Tracy Johnson Media Group. Mike, Andy, and I are actively engaged in helping you deliver the best results for your radio station. And it's one of those things where it's not an expense, it's an investment that will pay off for you in many, many ways for a long period of time. So thank you all so much for coming to this. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you on the next workshop.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.